Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome yet again to our Mental Health Tuesday. Today being our 168th session. Every week, every Tuesday night, we are here to discuss about mental health. This is important because in the last many years, mental health has taken away a lot of people. It is affecting our brothers and sisters. It is affecting our spouses. It is affecting our friends. It is affecting our colleagues. So that's why every Tuesday night from 8:30 to 9:30, we spend 1 hour to understand mental health issues so that we may be able to appreciate the dynamics of mental health and that we be able to support the people around us as well. So last week, we had a topic on suicide and suicidality, which was taken very well by our guest, Mary Gitau. And today, Mary Gitau comes back. And the question we are asking is suicide an event? Does it happen suddenly? Or is suicide a process? And if it's a process, then what are the stages? Where does it start? Where does it gain momentum? And where does it conclude? So welcome once again, Mary Gitau. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Mohammed. How are you?
We're doing well. Thanks to God and thanks to people like you who keeps us positive all the day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be here and to even continue with this conversation. Maybe even before we start, it's just acknowledging that this has been one of those difficult months of the year. And it's because we call it the Suicide Prevention Month. So many of us are triggered, many of us mourn, many of us grieve, many of us ask so many questions, even as we try to create awareness. And so maybe before we proceed, it's just like to just take a minute to honor those who've died by suicide, to honor those and stand with those that are survivors of suicide. And this means they have lost someone to suicide, or they themselves have survived an attempt, or even survived thoughts of suicide. So let's just take a minute to, in silence, to honor those ones that have lived or live in pain.
Thank you, Mary. So we are taking a minute.
Yes. Yes, please.
Aha, that has been a minute, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you.
And may that minute also help us reflect and give a commitment that never shall we succumb to concepts like suicide, and we shall ever support the people around us. So, Mary, before we go into my first question, I would like you to reintroduce yourself and what you do that makes you one of the best people to add on this platform and talk about this topic.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. I feel honored, and thank you so much for having me this evening. Thank you so much for us believing in what we do, and that's taking care of those who struggle with suicidality. So Mary Gitau is my name. I'm a psychologist by training and specialized in suicidology and self-harm, meaning I went to school and studied why people want to take their lives, why people self-harm, why people live in the distress of suicidality. I run an organization. I founded and run an organization called Center for Suicide Research and Intervention, which is based here in Nairobi. And what we do is we support those that are in pain and hurt of suicidality. That means they live with the thoughts of suicide, have attempted suicide, as well as providing post-prevention and post-care to those who've been left behind by a loved one. So yeah, I always say for me, I love and I talk so much about suicidality because it's one of those deaths that we can prevent. It's one of those deaths that we can say, no, we cannot continue losing young people, older people, our brothers, our sisters to this. And that we can actually take care of even people that struggle in this space. I also hold this space, and why I also talk about this so much is because I want us to also learn that people don't always become suicidal because of a mental illness. Rather, there's so many other things that are involved that could lead someone to suicidality. And this means social, cultural, communal, relational, economic. So it's not only a gene thing. It's not only a mental illness thing. It is things that, there are things that can happen, which means that chances are we, even us who are here this evening, can contribute to someone actually getting into moments of distress. And so if that can happen, how else, how can we best hold space for people who are struggling and help to bring them back so that we can all enjoy life to its fulfillment. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Mary, for that, I would say, baseline information towards the topic. So with all you have said, it is clear that suicide is not an event. It's not something that someone just wakes up someday and decides, I'm taking my own life. It takes stages, it takes steps, it takes phases. Now, if that is the case, that suicide takes stages, then Mary, tell us what are the stages, and then we'll ask you to explain to us one by one the stages and what it means for people around those people that are in that ideation or that feeling, and how can we support. Mary.
Thank you, Mohammed. So we have what we call impulsivity suicide. And impulsivity suicide is where someone can be triggered by an event or an action and they decide to end their lives. So the question is suicide a process or an event? And I would say, if you think about it, a short answer, it could be both or either. And this is because, one, I'll start by not really saying that it's a process, but there are things that happen that can actually lead someone to suicidality. Because people can actually move from what we call recognizable sequence or distress, and that means they move from a moment of distress, a moment of suicidal ideation or thoughts, planning, preparation, attempt, and unfortunate death. Why? Because risk can also build over time. And this is because of chronic struggles, which could include loss, abuse, substance abuse, social isolation, including acute triggers, which could be things like broken relationship or breakdown in relationship, financial crisis, or even humiliating events. All these can actually accelerate the pathway to suicidality, which then means that there are actually windows of prevention if we think about suicide as a process. And then why would we say that it could also be like an event or impulsive? One, because you see, at that particular moment, something happens, like, for example, even a humiliating kind of event where your ego, especially for the male species, your ego is interfered with. So it just comes like very immediate after a very short period of distress, and it could lead to a suicidality. So treating it like an event actually highlights that we need to also be very alert to how people are responding to different things. And that's, if you remember, I think last week we talked about how can we support. And I remember is it in this event? And I remember just saying kindness, compassion is very key if we'll have to prevent suicidality. Mohammed?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mary. And maybe from the same sentiments that you've given, what are the ways that as people we could say be more observant, and how can we, in the case of physiological pain, we talk about first aid before someone sees a doctor. What is the semblance of first aid when you observe someone at this stage?
Let's say, for example, Mohammed, you have this friend that you've hung out for so many years, or even you've known even for the last 3 months. You know how they look, you know how they dress, you know when they're jovial, you know when things are not doing so well, right? And then maybe moments you even notice that, my friend, okay, what do we call your friend, Mohammed?
Let's call him Ali.
Ali. So Mohammed has a friend called Ali. They've been buddies for some time. But Mohammed doesn't seem to be okay. And every time, Mohammed, you go to your friend Ali, you ask, hey, bro, what's up? Niaje leo? Alafu he keeps saying, oh, niko poa. But maybe something even happened. Something maybe even distressful. Maybe even loss of a friend or a job or something. But kila saa, he keeps telling you, ako salama, ako sawa. One of the things that you can help your friend is saying, ni kwenda tu karibu na yeye, and then you say, Ali, you know, sometimes when we go through such things, we can think about hurting ourselves. Tell me, are you there? So you see, because you have to be very intentional, because people start having these thoughts of suicidality, and it just even start by distressful thing. Mtu anza kufikiria, what if I actually died and I never woke up? And then when we tell our friends that, when we acknowledge with our friends that pain can actually lead you into moments of not wanting to be there, they feel validated and they know, kumbe someone is actually present with me. So that's the first thing we actually want to ask them. And then, for example, what if they said yes and they said, yeah, by the way, my life has really been harsh and I just think there's no need of me living. Then you can even ask it very directly. Are you thinking about killing yourself? Because direct questions are very okay. And then depending on how they respond, for example, they could say, bro, siku expect mtu anaweza niuliza swali kama hiyo, but that's the truth. Then you can even go ahead and tell them, have you thought of how you would do it? You see, what you're trying to gauge or to check is the level of risk. Are they at a risk of 1, or are they at a risk of 7+ that needs immediate intervention, or just sitting down with them? So that's even how we do first aid. Our first aid involves having a conversation with this person. Because remember, someone who is in a suicide crisis, we cannot use blood test or use a thermometer to know how bad or how bad it is. We can't do a blood test. We can't use a thermometer. It's a conversation. We want them to confide in us. We want them to say it, even as we are looking at them. And that engagement could change everything, because they will feel validated because someone is actually noticing that they're in distress. But most of the time, us as friends, us as family, us as clinicians, we hold back from asking this direct question. And these direct questions would actually be a saving point to someone in crisis. Mohammed?
Wow. That's, I want to say it's a skill, and I want to be very honest that it's easier said than done. It needs experience, it needs courage and all that. Maybe let's open it up to the audience.
Yes.
What are we thinking? What is our view of what Mary is telling us this evening? You may raise up your hand, and you may write your question or comment on the call chat. Mahmoud, please be on standby and help me pick out elements that are coming on the call chat. Anybody with a question, with a comment, with a reflection? Okay, if there's nobody with a question and reflection, Mary, where does it go from there? Which we can call the next stage. If nobody were to stop them and give them first aid, where does it grow to?
Where does it go to? This person becomes more a loner. He feels nobody cares. The hopelessness is confirmed from their perspective. The helplessness is confirmed from their perspective. Remember, someone in distress. So the founders of suicidality, the one, my favorite is Edwin, he says, suicide, when someone is in a suicide crisis, it's a very extreme emotional pain. We actually call it psychic. The only thing you see is a very narrow tunnel of exit. How do I exit out of this pain? How do I get myself out of this pain? Because the pain, the psychological pain, is extreme, very painful from experience. You never see anything else. You never feel anything else. It's that pain, and it is too much. You know, the way you're having a headache, I don't know whether us who are sitting here have ever had, like, what do we call it? Migraine. You know, the way it is so painful. You're thinking, what kind of a tablet can I swallow at the moment for this pain to go away? That's the only thing you're thinking. Which tablet? Which is the strongest? That's what I want to swallow. For someone in a suicidality crisis at that particular moment, what can get me out of this pain? They don't think about anyone else. They just get thinking about, and that's why at times we think that someone who is in a suicidal crisis, they're selfish and that's why they're dying. Let me tell you, there's nothing that we think about or they think about. It's just that moment. I just have to deal with this pain. So if we do not notice this in a person, their helplessness, they feel more helpless, they feel more hopeless, and they have a plan, they actually actualize it. But the moment we are having a conversation with them and we are engaging them and we are even asking them, do you have a plan? If they say yes, we even want to go further and ask, let's talk about this plan. So the moment they tell you about their plan, we'll also go ahead and ask them. So let's also talk about the life part. You've been here for this couple of months, despite of the pain, despite of the neglect, despite of the loss. Tell me, what has made you live? What has given you hope to today? And then you will notice that they could brighten up because of maybe just one thing that has made them live to today. And then once they mention it, we want to go a little further and say, okay, let's talk, let's just explore this part of living. Let's talk about it. So when we think about the death, the reason for wanting to die, and the reason for wanting to live, what would you say? We would also want to ask them, when you think about the reasons for living and the reasons for death, is it coming from within you or from outside? Most of the time, it's from outside. People push people to their deathbed. And so that's how now we go in. We talk about these drivers to pushing someone to suicidality. Remember, it's to keep the conversation going. What if they don't have a plan to die, but they're in distress? We develop with them a plan, a plan for taking care of themselves. When distress comes, when this moment comes, what can we do to protect ourselves? But we never push someone or tell someone, don't do it. If you tell them don't do it, what next? We want to sit in with them and experience this pain together. The pain of wanting to die and the reasons why they have lived to date. Mohammed?
Asante sana. I realize this 1 hour is very little for all these kind of tools and skills. Let me again inspire people to share their experiences. Is there any experience you'd like to share? Are there any questions you'd like to ask at this point? Is there any difficulty that you wish? Okay, thank you. Kadzo, you go first.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this session. It's I figured it was going to be a reflective session for me, but I think I might have found some solution to an issue I'm having. As if we've interacted before on this chat, I've also had my own challenges with mental health, especially when it comes to suicidal ideation. I don't think, generally speaking, there's anyone who has romanticized death the way I have. Like, it's been a very long journey for me to get to the point where the first response to something isn't, say, just die, like that kind. So currently I'm struggling with a friend of mine who is in a very terrible situation in terms of economic wise. However, where I'm at this point, I feel like this friend isn't really open to conversations, to even just holding space. It's gotten to a point where every time we talk, that is all we talk about, the situation that they are in, that they don't see a way out. And it's also started to negatively affect me. And I'm trying to be more conscious and intentional with the boundaries I'm drawing to protect my own mental health and also support someone else. So this kind of person who is in that state, and I've been in that state where people will try and talk to me and I'd still think, oh, you don't know my story. You don't know where I'm coming from. You cannot begin to understand where I'm coming from. So how can I be a better friend while also, because truly the atmosphere in our conversations is something that mpaka I'm bringing it up now when the last time I spoke to them was maybe last week. It's because it's something that keeps popping into my head, but there are boundaries that I have drawn. I feel like I don't want to cross them. So maybe hapa mnaweza nisaidia na advice, solution. How can I maneuver this friendship as I try to hold space for this person while keeping my own boundaries? Thank you.
Asante Kadzo for being vulnerable and being open. I'm sure this is going to open frontiers for other people in the platform also who might be in your situation to also benefit from what Mary is going to respond. Yes, Mary.
Thank you so much, Kadzo. We appreciate for that question. So I hear you, and thank you so much for sharing, and even for previously holding and continue holding space. One, for yourself. Thank you so much for taking care of yourself. And thank you so much even for taking care of your friend. Remember, we can only give what we have, and you've really done your best to even take care of yourself. So for this friend, you remember when last week we talked about ambivalence. So the ambivalence is the wish to die as well as wish to live. So this someone who is in suicidality space has a wish to live and also a wish to die. So they are torn between two. So now they have really been talking about their wish to die. I don't know how far you have explored in terms of, have we talked about, do they have a plan? So yes, they've been talking about death, they've been talking about their wish to die. Do they have a plan? How does their plan look like? And that's a question that you can actually ask them. And you can even go further to even talk about how do they plan to actually actualize it. And then I want you to take a step further and talk about their reasons for living. Talk about things have been so hard for you lately. And every time we have this conversation, I notice the pain in your voice. Let's talk about the things that have made you come this far. Let's talk about some of the things that have happened in the past that have made you who you are. Let's talk about those. What would make you live for another day? What would encourage you to live for another day? What makes you keep going? What makes you want to wake up tomorrow in the morning? So let's shift gear from reasons for living, for death, to reasons for living with this friend. It doesn't mean you're not forgetting that they're in pain, but we want to also focus on this other side of them that is giving them hope for today because they're here. And let's encourage that. Let's embrace that. Let's celebrate life with them. That helps. You're not invalidating their desire to die, but you're also not forgetting that they're living. So let's focus on this. Let's see this. And it's also the same thing I would request us, even as we hold space for you tonight. When you think about even the different times that you've desired death, the different times that you've desired not to wake up in the morning, let's talk about what are some of the reasons that have held you to date. What are some of those beautiful things that make you want to wake up tomorrow and to keep going? And let's also focus on that. So I want to encourage you to shift gear, but you can also, the other thing that I also want to encourage you to do with your friend is say, even as I hold space for you, even as I care for you, do you think we could go and see someone else who can support us more? It could be a community leader. Like for example, even at Samba Sport, I know we have very intentional facilitators and mental health practitioners that can help you and support you to hold space for your friend. Not necessarily a psychologist or a counselor or a mental health professional, but people who are mental health advocates, because at times people who are struggling with suicidality fear to actually go to a psychologist. But can we tell our friend, hey, I want to be here for you, but I also want someone else to be here for both of us. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much. It helps. I'm going to try a couple of new things. I'm afraid they're in that space where they feel completely nihilistic. That is, nothing good is happening. Nothing good. There's no hope. But I think I can see and try a different approach the next time I talk to them, because I genuinely do believe there's always, even if it's a candle light, it's still some
Exactly.
form of light. Yes.
Even very micro, tiny things. It could just even be sitting down and observing the sun today. It could even just be sitting down and noticing the stars. It could just even be sitting down and noticing that cup of tea. Small. Just notice the micro, very tiny, the mustard seed. And support even from that perspective. Mohammed.
Thank you very much. I was admiring the conversation because this space is for such conversations. I'm mindful of time. We have 20 minutes to go. And please take us through the rest of the process where somebody navigates through all these processes until they complete their journey, if we can call it that. And then we'll be allowing people to ask questions and coming in after that. Mary, did you get that? Mary, are you there? Hi, Mary, are you still there? You are still there. I don't know whether you are speaking on mute.
Sorry. I was speaking all along to myself.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's get it going.
Yeah, so I was saying, I started by saying that we do not want people to complete this journey. We want to hang out with people until, that time. So, when we think about suicidality, someone plans. So someone has a plan. And this plan is, I will die on this day at this time. This is what I will use. This is how I will do it. And there are people who are very articulate. There are actually people who even plan for this for years. Someone has done this for 5 years, planning, because they want to actually be so sure that when they attempt, unfortunately doesn't fail, or but what we want is we want to intervene before people get into those moments of distress, and that's of those moments of attempting suicide. And that's why we as friends, we as colleagues, we as families want to start noticing the micro change in people's lives, including, there's some small things that we ignore that actually could be an indication that someone is in crisis, including their change of dress, including the perfumes they wear, including how they start talking to us, whether positively or negatively. So we want to be very intentional, even as we seek and support our friends. And maybe even as we continue with this conversation, I maybe want to push it back to us and ask, have we seen someone who has planned their death? Or do we know someone? That's a question to us. Anyone can say yes or no.
Kajo says, yes.
Mm-hmm. And to you, what would you have wished that would have done to you in those moments when there was a plan and an intent? Intent is intention.
Sorry, could you repeat?
at those during those moments when you're in that space of planning, intentionality, saying this is it, what would you have wished anyone out there did to you, or supported you, or said to you, or not said to you?
Honestly, for me, I don't know if anything anyone would have said at that particular moment would have gotten me out of that space. It was one, I felt like it was one of, or I feel like it was one of those situations where everyone else is like, oh, you have really nothing to be so depressed about. But on the inside, it was a feeling, a pain that I had carried for a really, really, really long time. And for me, I just wanted it to end. It was really that simple. Yeah.
Please notice what she has said. She says that she felt like everyone looked at her and said, you have nothing to keep you in that space of suicidality. And isn't that what many of us actually think about someone who is struggling in suicidality? When someone comes and says to us, I am struggling, I'm in pain, I want to die. Or we can even notice it. And you're like, you have things. Hi.
Mary, I want to confess, in all this journey of mental health, I don't think I've ever said this to anyone. But I want to confess, many, many years ago, could be 30 years ago, or at least 25, when I was already starting to do my stuff. And of course, for those who know, I come from a very, very humble background where getting meals was a struggle. Your parents can't afford fees and scholastics and all that. So you really felt like you are at the lowest ebb. And then comes a time when a neighbor in the village who has a mother who is working, a father who is working, they have a car, and they go to the best schools, and you come to hear they've taken their lives. And you're like, so what's wrong with that guy? As in, if they were given the life we were given, would they have survived even a month? Because for me and for the people around me was like, taking your own life is about carrying so much burden that is visible to everybody. Little do we realize as we go into mental health that there could be minute things that people don't see, but they are piling up over a period of time that don't get answers.
Correct.
That nibble you to an extent that you feel empty.
Yeah.
It may not be the vehicle, it may not be the cars, the hunger, the food. It could be the very small things where other people don't think matter, but they nibble you slowly, like vile mtu unakula mbao, until you become empty.
That's true. Thank you for sharing that, Mohammed. You see, that's what pushes many people to the grave, because many of us exit the stage. Because the moment you're saying, you should know what I am going through, the moment you say that about a person, the moment you reflect about that about a person or a community, you've exited the stage. And the person in crisis actually feels it. And that could be the time that they actually take that step of death. So it is because our body language can actually communicate to people in distress. Our actions, our words, our eyes, our mouths. So it is us to also know, even as we think about the process, the event, the impulsivity of suicidality, how do we even respond to people? Someone I think last week said that he had this friend, and one day he was also like trying to sort something urgently, and then his friend just said, bro,
akinasikia tu life imenichosha, and then he just said, ablo, niko na vitu mob sahi, I'll catch up later. He went, akamaliza his stuff, and when he came back, he never remembered that his friend ever said something. And life continued for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. On the 8th day, the friend died by suicide. You know, so it is how do we take a moment when our friend even say those small things? Because you see, that friend could have been planning. He had the intention. He had a plan. He had a method or a means. So for suicidality to happen, there must be a means, there must be an intent, there must be a plan, and of course the distress, which is the trigger, which is the driver. So with all that, imagine if a trigger happens. That's it. So that's what I'm saying, like us being able to notice and not just ignore. And that calls for kindness. That calls for compassion. That calls for us to slow down and notice. And that's why I love what we do with Samba Sport, because we invite people to notice themselves, their bodies. And as we notice our bodies, we are also noticing other people's bodies, the nervous system, how they're responding to different things. And that could mean us even supporting. Even as we watch people play, like for example, Sazile, we are watching people play football, all different games. Sazile tunachungulia pia watoto wakicheza. How are these kids playing? Is it something that is real ama ni distressful? And then we can actually hold back and say, I noticed today even how you are playing, haikukuwa sawa. I noticed leo venye hata ulikuwa unarusha hiyo ball, didn't feel like it was you. You know, Mohammed?
Yeah, I'm urging people if they have any rejoinders, questions. Today it's been very quiet. I wonder whether the topic is too heavy or mwalimu anawasomesha vizuri sana, so people don't ask questions ama watu wanaogopa. Please keep us company. Let's hear from you as we finalize the 8 minutes remaining on the call. Any feedback, any questions, any clarification, any help? Well, Mary, we have 8 minutes
Yes.
to the end of the call. So please take us through generally from a layman's language, because there's a statement that you said, which I wrote on the call chat, that people push people to their deathbed, which is very true. Suicidality or suicide doesn't happen in a vacuum.
True.
It is because of our relationship with other people that send us to the grave. So generally, what are you saying as people, as colleagues, as spouses, as friends? What will be your best recommendation, that how do we handle each other in a way that we prevent even the thinking that I may want to consider taking my own life?
Let's go back to where we came from. And that's our community. I call it koinonia, or why the reason why God created us, for connection. When you think about our roots, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they shared even the little that they didn't have. Not that they had, they didn't have. Including the time they didn't have. Including the time they have. Including the maize they didn't have. They shared that. And that's the same thing. Because you see, why I say that people push people to suicidality or to their deathbed is because suicide is not just an internal conflict or struggle. It is also us. When we get home to our families, how do we relate with our own people, our partners, our children? How do we relate with them? How do we relate with our siblings, our uncles, our aunties, our neighbors, the people in the community? You know what I said, Sazile? Even to amekusalimia, how do you respond to them? So going back to where we are coming from, and that's the community. Us who are here, number one, how do you live with you? Do you even take moments to notice your existence, one, as a person? You know, many of us, because of how the system is, we are so rushed. We don't even notice our own existence. You know, unamkanga tu you blanketi, unaenda kwa bafu. You don't even notice you're taking a shower. You don't even notice your own body. You don't even know how you breathe. You don't even know you're breathing. Going back to you. And when you go back to you, it will be easy for you to go back to where we came from. And that's our community. Because then you will also look at the community as a whole. Not you only, but that I belong. You know, I just want to say that these three things, they belong, believe, and behave. If you want people to feel they belong or to behave, we must make them first belong. If people belong, they will start believing in us, and then they'll start behaving like us. So us going back to where our communities, how did our great-grandparents live? How did they take care of each other? People belonged and people behaved as one. Hii segregation yenye tumeweka, we need to remove it. How are we kind? Am I kind to myself? Even noticing those micro moments of even gratitude, waking up in the morning. Am I gratitude first as a person? And then even encouraging us as a community to be to have gratitude. I keep talking about the word kindness and compassion because they're everything, you know? They're everything. It's how people will live. It's how people will survive. So my invitation to all of us, my challenge to all of us, my call to all of us, let's go back to where we're coming from. And that's the community where God created us for connection. And us to move from a survival mechanism to go back to that place of connection that I am because Mohammed is. I am because Mwanaisha is. You know, so us supporting each other, that we can actually feel the pain of each other. When I get a text that, hey, when you send a text like, for example, Mohammed, Mary, how are you? And I ignore that question of how are you? Can you pause back and say, actually, Mary didn't respond to the how are you? She just went straight to the responses. It's those small things. When someone comes and says, hey, bana, mi nimechoka, can we hold back and hear, umechoka aje? Nini imechoka? Mwili? Akili? What exactly is it imechoka? Enye mi nasikia tu give up. Let's talk more. Pause even for 2 minutes. You know, when someone comes and says, hey, kichwa inaniuma, let's hear that. Slowing down and going back to us is the main thing that I'm inviting us into. Mohammed?
Thank you very much, Mary. I think going back to our community, koinonia or Ubuntu is the main gap. If we go back there, basically we can be there for each other, and that's where it starts. I have had this feeling, and I've shared it with other people, that if we were there for each other, even at the onset of the minute stress, and you are there to tell someone it will be okay, we'll walk this journey together, then nobody will desire to visit a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Because it is when you feel overwhelmed from one stress to another stress, to compounded stress, to trauma, to depression, that is when now it reaches a point where you can't do without a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and drugs. But we can be each other's drugs before we need those drugs. There are comments that have come in. Mahmoud, if you are there, if you can tell us what's going on.
From the culture, there's a message from Cephas Juma saying the topic is indeed very heavy. I have an experience. I buried my cousin who worked as a lab assistant here in Kwale. That is back 2018. He came home with the reagents and took it, and that was the end. Just about 3 weeks ago, my neighbor took his life. It is so sad. It is so sad. Cephas, Madam Gita was giving you hugs, and she appreciates your sharing. That's all from the call chat. Back to you, Muhammad.
Thank you very much. And because we have come to the end of the time today, let's allow Mary to give us her closing remarks, and then we call it a day.
As we are just about to finalize the month of September and even the next month of October, which is the Mental Health Awareness Month, let's continue doing our very best. And we know what our very best is. Council has shared a very good, a very practical example of even as we are supporting each other, we are also taking care of ourselves. Let's take care of ourselves and let's always seek connection with each other. You know, it doesn't mean that I keep saying that in the shift of a moment, any person can actually get into distress. But how do we care for each other? Let's keep checking on each other. Let's keep taking care of each other and being there for each other. And for us to keep coming and having conversations, and let's go back to us to start even noticing our own bodies, how our bodies are even responding to things, picking things and hearing. And that will also help us even as we navigate all the distress that we're experiencing in this world. Thank you, Mohammed.
Mary, as you close, there's a question from Wanjiru. She says, Dr. Gitau, do you also help with grief issues? I have a son whose teacher said he may be struggling with delayed grief. He is so withdrawn and I don't know how to get him speak out. So I think, Mary, you may need to get in touch with Wanjiru and see how she can be assisted.
Okay, let me text my number here.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mary and Wanjiru. We stand in solidarity with you, and Mary Gitau is going to offer her support, but also come around if you need that continued presence and support. We may not be that much experts, but we have a way that we can stand in solidarity with you and make it easy. So with that, I want to thank Dr. Mary so much for being so available and very eloquent and skillful in her presentations. And we know we will call you again. This has been your 6th or 7th appearance on this wall, and we know we'll get back to you again. We'll want more of you. For everyone else who's been here with us, we want to pray that what has been shared here today will make you better, not just you, but will give you the skills and capacity to reach out to those around us who are suffering and will need our help. May God bless you. Good night. We love you so, so much if you never knew.